The super industry in Australia is actually the fourth largest pool of retirement assets in the world.
Welcome to Super Simple Chats, Rest's very own podcast. We will be speaking to industry experts about all things super, trying to make it understandable and relatable for everyday Aussies. After all, it's one of the biggest assets you'll ever have. We're recording this podcast on Gadigal land. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Any advice you hear on this podcast is general in nature and doesn't take into account your financial situation, needs or objectives. Issued by Retail Employees Superannuation Pty Ltd. Before deciding to join or stay, consider the relevant PDS and TMD at rest.com.au/PDS. Super can feel like a little bit of a mystery, especially when you first realise that the money is not just sitting in your account, but it's actually being invested on your behalf. In fact, what we've started to realise is that a lot of people think that the world of suits and stock markets can be a little bit complex. But I'm Ange, and I'm here with my co-host Andy, and we're joined today by Lydia from Rest, and we're going to debunk some of these things and talk a little bit more about the investment basics. So in today's episode, we're going to be chatting about what's happening behind the scenes with your super, what investment options are, what asset classes are, and how risk and return kind of work together. Additionally, I think we're also going to talk about the difference between growth and defensive assets.
We are.
And we're probably going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into Rest's investment menu. So thank you for joining us today, Lydia. We're really excited to have you on the show.
And Andy, thank you for having me.
So as we've discussed a lot in previous episodes, this seems to become like it just comes up all the time. A lot of people don't realize that their super is invested. And in fact, a lot of people think that it's just money set aside in like a savings account, but we know that that's not the case. So can you tell us a little bit more about why super is invested?
Absolutely. So it isn't really money. Okay, not in the sense of money that you have in your hand nowadays that you can spend, but it is yours and it's definitely there for your retirement. And when you get to retirement, the idea is that you will then have that money to spend. So it's there for our members. And the reason it's invested is to hopefully grow it through that super journey until you get to retirement. By investing it, it gives it the potential to grow over time. And the idea is that gives you more money in retirement.
Which sounds good to me.
Of course, investments aren't guaranteed. They can go up and they can go down. But over that long term, and if you start investing when you start working, that's a long time until most people retire. The idea is
it's like 50 odd years or something.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll end up with a bigger nest egg by the time you get there.
I feel like this idea of investing has really exploded over the past 5-6 years. I can't tell if it's just because I've turned 30 and all my friends are putting their money into ETFs and stuff like that and telling me to do the same thing. Or if, there's been like new apps that have come onto the scene, right? I can think of one where it just rounds up every dollar that you spend and puts it aside for you. Super isn't quite the same as that. I guess there's probably some similarities here and there, but it does have some parallels in that, you have funds in your account that are being invested on your behalf. So can you just give us a bit more of a deep dive into how it really works?
Of course. So you're right. There are some similarities. You're getting a little bit of money put aside to grow into more over that long term. And when your super's put into a fund like Rest, it's invested on your behalf by a team of investment professionals. So don't worry. You don't need to know everything about an investment process to grow that super for your retirement.
Because I don't know the first thing about it. So
there's plenty to know and to understand. And you can easily learn more about it if you want to and if you're keen to find out more. So how does it work? So that money, which isn't money, but that your contributions, your super savings, they're set aside and that goes into what we call an investment option.
Got it.
Right.
So a superannuation investment option or a super investment option, it's just the way that we invest on your behalf to help your funds grow.
Yeah.
Different options have different levels of risk and return. So, for example, some of our investment options, which might invest more heavily, so have a greater allocation, a larger allocation to shares, Equities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a term I understand.
Okay.
Yep.
They're typically higher risk, so they potentially have higher return.
Hey everyone, Ashley from Rest here. When we talk about risk, it can sometimes mean different things. In this podcast, we mean investment risk. The chance your super returns could go up or down in value more than expected. Sometimes returns can be lower than expected, and in some cases, you might lose money. Now, back to the pod.
Others might focus on investments that are deemed less risky or more defensive and have a higher weighting to those. And they might be more invested in things like bonds or cash.
And just to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, my understanding is that there's some sort of relationship between risk and the amount of time that you have investing. Can you kind of break that down for me a little bit?
Absolutely. So we've got a simple range of options. And the idea here is you can choose from that range.
Yep.
Most fund members who come to us will come through their employer, and they'll go into, you'll hear the terms default or My Super, and that's our growth option designed to grow over the retirement journey.
Well, it's very aptly named.
Yeah, it is. It is. But of course, if members want to make a choice, they can make a choice. So that's why it's a simple range. It helps you understand. But the idea is the longer you hold those investments, the more potential they have to grow. There's a longer opportunity. So if you want to take more risks because you've got more time for those risks to pay back the expected return, then you can do so. But you might not want to. You might think differently, or you might not have as long and therefore be more comfortable taking less risk to give you that smoother journey. And it's a trade-off.
Got it. Yeah, right. So you've just mentioned growth there, right? It's a growth option that exists. When I started with Rest, I noticed that immediately I was in a growth option. Do you mind just expanding a little bit on what that invests in?
Okay. Good question. So look, our growth option, like all our options, it invests across a huge range of underlying assets. So many different individual assets. And that's one of the benefits of investing with a super fund. So your contributions get pooled with all our other members' contributions. And it means that bigger pool of assets can go and buy more assets, different assets.
Oh, so it's like a collective. So because there's more members, then more money in the pot to play with.
You also get access to a wider range of investments.
Okay.
Because there's a total pool of assets that's bigger.
Yeah.
So
strength in numbers.
That's the one. So
got it.
we can talk a bit more about what that means.
Yeah, that sounds good. I am going to derail us for just a moment because I did read something that I thought was really, really interesting. So apparently the Australian superannuation industry has a total asset pool worth over $4 trillion with a T trillion dollars worth of assets, both here and globally. Like, I just think of that number and I can't even imagine how many zeros that is. I think it's like 9. I don't know. Someone correct me, please.
12 zeros. It was 12.
But there's a huge amount of money that's invested. Can you tell us a little bit more about how much of that's a slice of that pie Rest has, and maybe some of the cool assets that Rest invests in with that money?
The super industry in Australia is actually the 4th largest pool of retirement assets in the world.
That's huge.
So there's a number of super funds available.
Yep.
Rest is one of the largest, and we have about $100 billion now under management.
With a B?
With a B.
Everyone at home listening, that was with a B. That's pretty impressive.
The good news, though, is when you're that size, it gives you size and it gives you scale. And it means you can access great investment opportunities, both on the ground in Australia, but also worldwide.
We went and asked everyday Aussies what they thought about this.
Do you know about how it gets invested?
It can either be in houses, properties, or just into a savings account.
Not really? Okay.
I don't know. You know what? Time to review.
Yeah.
Time to review because I don't actually pay attention to it.
Yeah. Did you pick what investment options you were for each one, or were you in the default investment option for each one?
No, a couple I got to pick.
Now you got the apps and that where I look at my super, I can go and change and readjust stuff like that. But back then you couldn't. It was all paper. I didn't even know what was in it really.
Yeah. I changed supers recently. Like you could do quizzes and things like that beforehand to work out what was going to be better for you and what was coming in, what was coming out.
But you just, sometimes I do the default only, but later on I found that there's one that sounds more trustworthy. Then I put everything into that one.
Yeah. Now I want to know, what are some of those cool assets?
Well, the good thing is that those assets, and some of them are really interesting, but they're quite often investments that our members couldn't necessarily buy into if they were doing this on their own.
Yeah,
so
got it.
One of our best known investments is Key Quarter Tower, or QQT. So that's a property investment. Some of our Sydney siders might know this. It's a beautiful office building down at Circular Quay.
That's the pointy one, right? Down at Circular Quay. Yeah. It's gorgeous.
And QQT's won major international architecture awards, but also some major sustainability awards, because when it was built, we didn't knock down the old building completely. We actually saved and reused much of the core of that original building and built around it.
It's like a building glow up.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why the Green Building Council of Australia have actually awarded this a 6-star Green Star rating.
Well, isn't that a bit of an overachiever? I didn't even know you could have 6 stars, but apparently you can.
Yeah.
That's a tangible asset. That's kind of a build property that you can actually touch and see. We've spoken earlier about shares or equities. So we also hold those from around the world. And there's some really interesting holdings in our portfolios. So,
tell us more.
Yeah, so just to be clear, these aren't stock tips. They're just examples of investments currently in our portfolio. Yeah, so let's look at one of them. It's TSMC.
Say that 5 times really fast.
TSMC.
Yeah,
no.
There we
Didn't
go.
think you could.
It's actually the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
Cool.
Still over my head.
So still none the wiser. But if I tell you it's actually the company that makes chips that power a lot of your everyday items that you use. So think phones. Think computers, think even cars. So you've heard of companies like Apple and Nvidia.
Yes.
We may invest in those, but actually this company that we also invest in is behind that modern technology. So as the use of that technology is growing and the whole world is becoming more digital and AI is having a greater influence on everything that we do, we're really thinking about this in terms of what we're investing in. These are just some of the many, many investments that we have within.
When you say many, like how many?
I think it's something like 2,000, maybe something around that.
Whoa.
Don't quote me, but
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because you've got that size and you've got that scale. So there'll be lots that are little tiny bits, but that diversifies you. So that spreads your risk across a huge range of opportunities.
That's awesome.
So asset classes. I've heard of this. Yeah. I've heard of this phrase. Can you just expand a little bit more on what an asset class would be? Give me a really quick 101.
Okay. So look, an asset class is just a fancy technical term for a group of investments that have similar characteristics, so behave in a similar way.
Right.
Okay, so they tend to behave in a similar way to each other, so we group them into asset classes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll often hear us talk about 2 different types of asset class, so growth assets and defensive assets.
Okay.
So I say 2, but you can also have some investments that have characteristics that are both growth and defensive.
Sure.
So shares are considered a growth asset.
Yep.
Cash is considered a more defensive asset.
Yeah.
Property has characteristics of the both, so a mid-risk asset is sometimes the term you'll hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so what's the difference between growth and defensive?
So growth is called growth because it's designed to grow, but in order to grow, it's likely to take more risk. So it could grow, but there's a risk it may not grow and maybe even have a negative return. Defensive assets tend to give you more stability. So they may not give you as high a return, but their prices or their values are likely to be more stable over time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to unpack that for a second. Why would I want my super to grow more slowly? Like, to me, I mean, what would that reason be?
Yeah.
Can't wrap my head around it.
It's a really good question. When we create our investment options, we're mixing together different blends of growth assets and defensive assets and the combined.
Yeah.
Think of it like baking a cake, putting all the ingredients from from a recipe into to come out with that cake. That's what we're trying to do as investors.
Cakes is something I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk cake.
So our growth option is called growth because it will have a tilt towards more growth assets. So I think between 60 and 75% of it will be what we term growth. And that tilt to growth means that over the long haul, it's got the potential to grow more than an option that is tilted more towards defensive assets. But of course, higher potential returns come with taking on higher risk.
So if I was to use the cake analogy, it's like mixing or changing the ratios of the ingredients. So if you like your cake more fudgy, you'll increase the amount of cocoa. But if you like your cake more dry, you'll increase the amount of, what is it, flour. So it depends on what your preference is.
But all your ingredients are needed to make the cake.
Yeah.
So, but all investments will carry some risk.
Right.
Okay. So even cash carries some risk.
From low to high, different levels of risk. But if you don't have that risk, then you also don't have the opportunity for the return. So think of two sides of the same coin. They come hand in hand. So it's not that risk is something to necessarily be scared of or worried about. It's your personal comfort with how much risk you want to take in order to get a chance of your desired return outcome.
Yeah. Some people like skydiving. Some people like lawn bowls.
I like skydiving.
Yeah.
We're going skydiving after this.
I like lawn bowls. We can go lawn bowls after skydiving.
And look, our members, we talk about what we call the risk-return trade-off. And it's exactly that. They're deciding how much of each they're comfortable to take.
Yeah. So some of us will jump out of planes and some of us will roll balls on a lawn.
Generally, investments that have higher, longer-term return potential will come with higher risk.
Yeah.
Over the short term, particular. So the reverse is true as well.
Okay.
The lower risk or the defensive asset classes like cash typically offer lower, longer term returns. So why would you want it to go more slowly? It's about the journey and the path that you want to take.
Yeah.
And probably the time as well that you've got left before you retire, I assume.
Yeah. So before I picked up that you said there's different options, right? So I guess there's like high risky options or less risky options. Most people just fall into the default, I guess, right? From the get-go. So I'm more curious to know what investment options that Rest does have to choose from. And can I make a choice?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Rest has a simple investment menu. We've got 9 different options on that menu. And
it's like 9 cakes.
Like 9 cakes. So
a whole patisserie out there.
Cake do you want?
Delicious.
The idea is that each of those will have different risk and return profiles.
Yeah.
So you can choose between those. Think of it as the 9 cakes. Hopefully there's one in there that you'll
I'm
like.
going to be thinking about cakes after this. Oh, God.
So you've heard us talk about the growth option, the default, but there's other options. So another one we've got is sustainable growth.
Yep.
So if you want an option that has a higher allocation to growth assets, sustainable growth might be suitable for you, particularly if you want your super investments to also come with enhanced environmental, social, and governance characteristics. Right. So if that appeals to you, that's an option that you may wish to choose.
Yeah.
And if you're like a skydiver like me, what would I be interested in? Do you have any like super high growth?
Probably one of the best ways to learn a little bit more about them is check out the online tool that we've got and work out which option suits you as a skydiver or you as a lawn bowls player. These tools, they provide general information, so it's not personalized to you. It won't take account of your personal objectives, but it'll give you an idea and information on what may be suitable to your needs.
Just shameless plug, I believe that Rest offers it to its members at no additional cost.
Yeah. We've also got a range of tools to help you understand more. So lots of quick, simple, easy videos, articles. You can find those on the Rest app. There's a section called Learn if you want to go and find out a little bit more. They're bite-sized, they're chunks. You can do as many or as little as you want. If you're interested in finding out more of that information, that's a really good starting point.
Awesome. We'll put some links in the chat, in the
show notes.
In the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. But also in the chat.
In the show notes. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Not the chat. What chat? There's no chat. Maybe there is a chat. We should start a chat.
We'll put the links in the show notes.
Thanks, Andy.
I feel like there's so much more to unpack. Like we've kind of just barely scraped
tip of the iceberg.
the iceberg. That's mixing metaphors, but it works for me. But yeah, we barely scraped the surface, and I think there's so much more to get into, and I'd love it if you'd be willing to come back and maybe chat a bit more about different investment options that we have. Let's get into it.
Thanks, guys. Look, it's been a pleasure. And if I can even just help simplify some of those myths and make it easier for our members to understand what their super's doing on their behalf and for them to make a choice and be comfortable in the actions and the choices they make. Yeah, more than happy. If you just learn a little, it can just help increase that comfort level.
Well, that was it. That was contractual, right? Like, it's on camera now. We've got her locked in.
Lydia's coming back. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lydia. I thought today's episode was really interesting and I learnt a lot myself. So I really appreciate you giving us the time.
And a little tip, if you don't actually know what investment option you're in, jump onto the app, have a look.
Well, as always, if you like today's episode, please make sure to leave some comments below, like, subscribe.
And that's
super simple.